Let's take a look. Let's go into Pro Tools. We're going to fire up Pro Tools. Hopefully that helps for newer users. So, it's going to do its thing. And then here we go into our first setup. So, startup sequence for Pro Tools. Open Pro Tools, first step. Okay, so step one, jot this down. Startup sequence, open Pro Tools. I'm going to go ahead and go into our first set of 10 minutes. So let me add a timer so I shut up on time. Okay, so open Pro Tools, step one. Step two, this is the step that everybody misses. Okay, hit cancel. Step two, hit cancel. Seems kind of odd. It throws me into a thing that gives me all this information. Shouldn't I start creating? Actually, no. So this is where everything gets messed up. Now, what's very interesting about this, we're going to hit cancel, and I'm going to walk you through this procedure. First of all, our goal is to confirm that the audio interface that we'd like to use is online. Okay? In order to confirm that it's even available in online, we're going to have to go select it. A lot of times what happens is, it's like these systems. How many of you had a computer that was on when you walked in? Anybody have a computer that was on when you walked in? Okay. I will start by saying this. Every time you walk into this room, or any other room that you're not necessarily familiar with, that has multiple users, do a reboot. In this room, always do a reboot. Okay? The reboot will make sure that if anything got locked up, or if there was maybe someone was browsing something on the internet that had created some sort of cookies or some sort of threading that caused problems with the system, you wouldn't know it if you just jumped in there and started working. And then you get along the ways, and before you know it, you're out of luck. One of the things that I see a lot is someone accidentally renames the hard drive. And unfortunately, it's very easy to do on Apple computers. Renaming the hard drive will really mess you up if you're trying to open something that accesses information from that drive, if the drive was renamed anytime in the process, and that happens a lot. So that's one of those things you just, hey, it's easier to not have to worry about the million reasons that the computer system might not work if you just jump in on it and always do a reboot. Today we're not doing anything crazy, so you're fine. Monday, immediately come in and do your reboot if it's on. Does that make sense? Kind of makes it safe, nice and clean and easy. You don't have to worry about anything that was cached. And the other thing with the reboot is, and this is the reason I mentioned in the first place, your interface, typically your interface, after it's been sitting there forever, not being used, tends to time out. And that's kind of interesting. You guys probably, all of you have worked with computers, so you've seen that your computers have multiple bus ports. So you may look at your computer and say, oh, mine has 4 USB ports. Well, the problem with it is that those ports have to be supplied power. So as new devices are introduced to those ports, there are power surges that take place on the system. And sometimes things and elements that are attached to those ports actually get dropped in communication. In addition, the FireWire ports, additional ports that you have that go along with your system also suffer some of the same problems, where eventually they will drop the device or they'll time out, So we have to confirm that even though it's plugged in and it looks like it's working, we want to confirm that it exists, and furthermore, we want to confirm that we're attached to it. So what we're going to do as step 2 is we're going to go to, so notice it still says Pro Tools, right? So be sure that it says Pro Tools, and if it doesn't, actually off to the side. Command tab, right? Command tab. This one's a simple one for you guys to use. If you don't use it already, right? Command tab. Command tab, and then I'm going to have you guys make sure you do this in addition to this. Command tab, this is what Command tab does. If I hold Command and I hit Tab, what it's going to do is it's going to cycle my open applications. And the reason that's so important is it's easier to use Command Tab to go back and forth between stuff. And again, see Pro Tools is back at the top of the screen. Than it is to have to go and find each application down in the toolbar. You can see that they're open down in the toolbar by these dots. But it's a lot more simplified of a process. All right, so step 2 in our starting up Pro Tools, go to Setup, Playback Engine. Now, I'll zoom in on this so you can see it. When you guys do this, you'll very clearly see whether or not your interface is active or if it's inactive. Now, like I mentioned to you, I use multiple interfaces. There's a couple reasons why. Sometimes the reason why you might have multiple interfaces online, like let's say we have a drum setup. Let's say we have a drum setup, and then maybe we have some other really complex configuration or setup. technically we could have 2 drum setups if we wanted to. If we wanted to set up one interface with one whole mic setup for drums and another interface with a whole other mic setup for drums, and just toggle between them. You know, toggle between things that are set up. That's why the Playback Engine will allow us to do these things. So in the Playback Engine panel, this is where we choose which interface we want to use. So notice if we click on it, or as I click on it, you see that you could use the built-in output, you could use the built-in input, or you could use something called the Pro Tools Aggregate. Now the Pro Tools Aggregate I/O, the issue that we have with this is, notice it says built-in mic or built-in output, and it doesn't say both. And that's what the Pro Tools Aggregate I/O is. Essentially, it's a software patch that they put in to remap so you could use both simultaneously. But in most cases, you're going to be looking for an external device. Now, the reason I even brought up the slide that said FCA 1616 was so that you knew what the heck I was talking about when I said, hey guys, for your responsibility for this class and this lab, step 3 is choose FCA 1616 as your playback engine. So you could write that down as step 3. It's really quite simple. But FCA 1616. And then again, we're going to do this very soon. Now, in the playback engine, there are a couple things that we need to talk about and discuss. One thing that I will say right now is that your buffer size. Actually, let me just figure out how many processors we have. Oh, we don't have. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. I will say this as a basic default for your system playback engine here. You can go ahead and use. I would just write 512 as step 4. Select your hardware buffer size at 512 samples. We're going to talk about what this is later. 512 is a nice, safe, easy spot. You could use 256, but 256 is a little too fast, and the operating might lag. There's a huge explanation behind that. Now, so there's your buffer size. We're going to talk about that in the future. Now, if you work on anything else, okay, if you're on Logic, Sonar, if you're on any of those other platforms, this should always be your step 1. Telling your system which device you're supposed to use as a playback engine. That essentially will assign where your audio output's coming from. Because even though your device is attached to the computer, it has to be configured to route your audio through that device. Okay, so right now, if we select this, that means that we are on the FCA 1616. That means we are routed there. Step, what are we on? 4?
Yeah.
Step 4. Right now, I'm going to give you the easy way to do this. We're going to go to Setup, I/O. And actually, you might want to, let me save this real quick. Sorry, I just wanted to save the settings. Okay, so this is the I/O window. The I/O window, I/O essentially stands for input output. Okay, so if you want to jot a note down, it says if you think I won't remember this, write down I/O input output. You need to actually tell your device how many inputs to use, how many outputs to use, where they're assigned, and furthermore, what they're going to be called. Because unfortunately, on different systems, the input output, like in this configuration, you can see we're on the output tab. It's line output 1, 2. On some systems, they prefer it just to be just the number with no additional information. It just depends on what kind of configuration is applied there. What I would like you to put down for your next step is go to the input tab. So go to input. Go to input. Good so far? Go to input. Select your next step. Select all inputs. I'm going to show you how to do this. It's actually quite easy. How many of you have used it, the command? I should say the command. Well, I guess it is. Command A. What is it used for?
All, or to highlight everything.
All. Okay. And it's functional here. In your next step, or I shouldn't say it's not your next step, but I told you to go ahead and select all inputs, right? Right beside it, write Command A. It's just your shortcut to do so. if you hit Command A, I'll undo that actually. If you hit Command A, there we go. If you hit Command A, you'll see that this will highlight everybody. Now what we're going to want to do here, and it sounds kind of weird, but what happens is when you move, I think this is the big key that most people don't get. They're like, why would this be important? If you jump from one interface to the next, it doesn't automatically transfer your I/O count from one to the other. It realizes there's an I/O count difference. It just doesn't reroute or automatically remap the input-output configuration. So when you jump from the built-in system, which only has essentially a stereo input and a stereo output, to this kind of system, what happens is it configures itself in a way that would eliminate the use of the extra channels. So what we want to do every time is go in, and on your next step, after you said select all, you're going to hit delete path. So your next step will be delete path. Just tell me when you're done. Good so far? Delete path. Then what we'll do is the next step is hit default. Now, if your system essentially was exactly set up the same way that it was before, it shouldn't look different. But when you do change from interface to interface in your Playback Engine, it will shift in the number of counts. What default does is this routes and maps it the way that it's supposed to be assigned to the interface. So if you have an 8-channel interface, it's going to reroute these to be mapped to the 8 channels that are active. Does that make sense? So this will always essentially reconfigure the system for you. In your next step, you're going to do the exact same thing on output. So your next step, you can just literally write, repeat, same steps for output tab. And literally you're just going to, what are we going to do? Command A, right? Delete the path, and hit default. It's really quick once it goes, right? Does that make sense? So you're just going to repeat those steps for the output. In your next step, you're going to repeat those steps one more time for the bus. Now the bus gets tricky. As we get there, we're going to teach you how to use these. Unfortunately, the downside to the bus is you can rename it to whatever you want. The bad part about that is that when you go from session to session, it will keep those names. So like these bus names, I could go in and rename, and I could call bus 1, 2, high five, But when I go into my next session and do a new project, it's going to keep that name. And if I'm not looking for high five, I'm looking for 1, 2, it really screws up the mapping. Or if my session was already built and previously it was using 1, 2, and it's going to search the system for 1, 2, and it can't find it, it's going to reroute it somewhere else. So it really causes a confusion with the computer. So again, same thing. It's just a simple delete path and hit default. Does that make sense? Now we're going to talk about these mappings a little bit more. I'm just going to bring back what was in here before just so that. That's all good. Okay. Actually, just cancel. At that point, your next step is to hit OK. So your next step is hit OK. At this point, we finished.